I have a couple of talking points.
You'll be surprised.
This is a pre-recorded session.
Sorry. This is open-ended or yes or no? What do I say? Yes, no?
So thank you very much everyone for being here. Outbound, as everyone knows, has been growing exponentially over the last couple of years and is really been outpacing even some of the best estimates over the last 4 years. However, the itineraries remain as predictable. They remain similar to what was sold historically. Even by age demographic, the itinerary per destination seems fairly similar year on year or age group by age group. So the question then arises that is this a challenge in the B2B ecosystem? Is this a challenge in the customer behavior itself? Or is it a challenge in our marketing and promotions that we are doing as tour operators, attractions or destinations? However, the question arises, how can we change this? How can we innovate in this space? And we'd love to hear from all of you in terms of how can we promote new experiences and get across India to ages across India to work on that. I think in the age of AI, we are seeing a lot more people, at least consumers, being well researched, well thought through what they want to do. But again, like I say, when they come back to the booking element of it, it doesn't seem to be that same level of research. So, icebreaker question, yes and no. Or just actually one word answer, and I'll start with the leady. Is there a challenge in, or where is the challenge with product diversity? Is it with the agent, the destination, the consumer, or just all of them?
All of the above.
All of the above. Gaurav, I'll ask you another one word question. Are travelers searching for diverse products but ultimately booking familiar ones, or are they not just even searching for them yet? So they're just searching for Burj Khalifa, only booking Burj Khalifa, or what are they doing?
I would say option one, we are just searching as we speak now, most of it.
Yeah, thank you. And same question to you, Vishal. What is the search? Where is the challenge? Is it in the agent, the destination, the consumer, the B2B ecosystem? Why is it that we have no product innovation?
I think it's a collective effort that,
Mr. Neeraj, when people come into your stores today, are they looking at new experiences, or are they still asking for Dubai 3+2 with Dow Cruise and Dubai and Safari, etc.?
So, this is open-ended or
No, one word.
What do I say? Yes, no?
No, see, it is the same products that they're asking for new, or you're selling the same old.
I have mix.
Alright, so we'll start with the ladies, and we'll go around and ask some questions. So, Deepti, from booking behavior and product data that you're putting out with Make My Trip, do you see a real appetite for secondary attractions and destinations? So, beyond the real bucket list per city, or newer attractions as well?
Sure, thanks. I think there's definitely an appetite for new, and that's a trend that's come around after COVID in a big way. And this cuts across most consumer segments. It's not really, you can't place a demographic to say only a millennial or a Gen X has more appetite for newer things. It cuts across. If you give the customer, they'll take it. But like India's always been for value and for the money they put in, if you show them the value that the destination has all that it needs, they'll take on and latch on to a new destination. But there has to be a mix of familiar and unfamiliar both. It can't be just everything new. So that's how it should be operating off.
Let me come to you now. Let me ask you a question. When people come into your stores or on your website and they want London, or they want Dubai, or they want Bangkok, how do you influence them for different destinations or offbeat destination? And how can you change that mindset of behavior to say, don't try something new, just start bows? Yeah.
I think, there are two set of customers. One, the customers who have made their own plans. They have built their, the expectation of the program, the number of days. More or less, they would bargain or they would ask for the same sort of cities or same set of attractions. I think it would be very hard to convert these customers into new things. But then there are customers who would ask for, who are open for choices. And as a B2C, as a consumer brand, our job is to facilitate in what customer thinks and of course add value wherever it is needed. Do I need to thrust every time that value into customer? Maybe not. Not possible because you have limited resources and you want to make best out of every interaction or every time what you spent with the consumers. Having said that, see, there is no template or there is no playbook saying that, look, Indians only buy these activities. I think this is a very simply a big overstatement. If there is a value in the attraction and the attraction is really not a copycat attraction, Indians will flood that place. If that place is Instagrammable, it has a bragging value, and word of mouth, people are spreading positive note about that attraction, people would go for it. There are many such examples where people don't go, rest of the world doesn't go, but Indians go there.
Is price be a major factor in this also, in the influencing the decision, where people are not sure where they want to go?
Yeah, so I think price plays. So there are two aspects on consumer behavior on travel. One is, if it is widely available, price plays a big role. If it is not available or if it is an extreme shortage, you can put the price at $500. People will go for it.
You talked about attractions now. I go to Gaurav. Good segue to get you in, Gaurav. Do you see your attractions in a destination as a secondary choice to say, hey, I want to go to Vietnam, then you figure out what attractions you want to do? Or do you see is that you want to go to a Legoland or Ardent Tower, or you're at Anand Prasad's and then you walk a destination around it? How can you influence that?
So my life would be so easy, right? If it was the second option. But see, again, I think as both between Neeraj mentioned, right, things are changing, things are evolving. How a tier A travels versus how a tier B travels or tier city travels really is very different. How they choose, what they choose, very, very different. From an attraction perspective, obviously the endeavor is, like for us at Merlin, we bought about 140 attractions. Very early when I started, I realized that selling all 140 today at that point of time wouldn't make sense. And I'll give you an example which I always quote this example to anyone I meet. One of our industry colleagues was going to Istanbul, and I pushed him. He was on his honeymoon, and I pushed him that we got a beautiful Madame Tussauds in the heart of the city. Why don't you go and visit with your wife? And I was so happy that maybe he will like it, come back and push more of it. I called him the next day and he said, Gaurav, you're a friend. Very good, you hosted us. But I did not know maybe 90% of the figures because they were more Turkish in nature, right? So I realized at that point of itself that maybe pushing everything doesn't make sense. So what we've been doing from an India perspective, obviously we've been choosing what to sell. So while we have 140, we only showcase maybe the top 25, 30. The question that you asked, trends are changing. We've seen huge interest in one of our products called the Legoland Resorts, where the product decides that the family is going there. So in bits and pieces, it's evolving. But to answer your question, if a Madame Tussauds doesn't decide that would I want to holiday in Singapore, but a Legoland in Malaysia may decide somebody to come from Singapore to Johor Bahru to visit Legoland Malaysia. So again, it is different aspects to each of our attractions.
Nice. Vishala, from a destination perspective, and how do you go about promoting the non-flagship book attractions and destination? And your previous Hafta as well, there's been when you were working with Visit Britain, there was a big push to push beyond London. I mean, how do you do that? How successful was it? And what was the trade feedback when you were doing stuff like that?
Thanks. So, I kind of echo what everyone has said about the individual spaces they all specialize in as well. I think it really depends on the destination you're promoting, because when I was at Visit Britain, you were promoting a country, well, 4 countries technically, but so it was kind of leveraging the big ticket items. So when you had the Cricket World Cup in 2019, we kind of used that to do the whole push for Manchester, right? What we eventually did see, of course, COVID hit us. One of the big priorities over there was to get people out of London, spend more time outside in the rest of England. I know that eventually in about 3 or 4 years post-COVID, when travel actually picked up again and came back to pre-COVID levels, I think Indians were spending more nights in the rest of England than London. So we saw that step change happen. The Commonwealth Games in Birmingham 22 also obviously helped with pushing the people out. What it effectively did is you had a lot of word of mouth, which is really strong in India. So when friends and family go out there and start talking about the fact that I went here and this is what you can do, it actually makes it that much easier for a travel agent or a tour operator to start selling those and putting those packages together. I know we work with a lot of the travel trade partners like, Neeraj and Dipti's offices also to put the group departures together. So it's kind of getting that whole cohesive, integrated effort that got that going. For me at the moment, like a destination like Ras Al Khaimah, for example, which is a, small, not as aware, people are not as aware of the destination in India. I think it's getting the message across that we're firstly developing. It's creating the awareness piece over here. And spring 2027, when Wynn Al Marjan Island opens, I think it's going to be that pivotal moment where you see a step change in the number of visitors we get, how people are looking at the destination, etc. Because we've got a lot of developments coming in the next couple of years. I think it's also the fact that we're talking about the attractions we've got, which are more experiences that complement what you've got in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, for example. We've got the world's longest zip line, for example, which you're only going to get here. It's the world's longest zip line. You've got a pearl farm that is unique in the region. Again, it's a live operational pearl farm. So it's kind of those experiences that we're pushing. What we've seen happen over the past year or so when we've kind of amped our awareness piece, working with our partners again to, get that product development piece going, is we're seeing people staying longer. So the one night or the day trips that people did from Dubai are now becoming close to 3 nights from India. I think there's that value for money proposition that's coming in. We are a destination that's targeting the premium traveler. Our push over the next few years is also to make sure that we're going towards the more premium segment that kind of understands this travel, etc.
So you touched on the pearl farm a little bit here. You touched on the zip line and stuff. So what's the feedback of these these newer attractions in the India market? What are group series operators buying them readily, or is it really something you have to push with incentives, etc., to get people to buy it?
You're not probably going to see group series coming in as yet. You've not seen it. There has been a bit of a challenge. Also to do with the fact that when you talk to any of the tour operators, the fact is the awareness was lacking, right? So once that awareness is now going out, they're seeing the FIT bookings coming in. It's the matter of time before the group itineraries start having all the 3 Emirates on or all the 4 Emirates on, etc. Connectivity is not an issue anyway between the various Emirates and the UAE. I think there's also the fact that when you're looking at the travel patterns, a lot of people are not, because they were not aware, the demand was not coming in terms of inquiries. When you're sitting in the front office in a tour operator, I think it's selling what you're comfortable with. A lot of the people in the frontline staff and most travel agents are probably not aware how I can package this together. So we spent a lot of time doing this. And I think, to sum up what we need to try and do really is destinations market icons.
You guys did a charter to Phuket and stuff, right? How do you go about, what is that sort of hook in Phuket, and what are destinations that don't have that hook too? They can't just simply give up and say, you know what, we're not going to get in India market.
See, very interesting because, Vietnam doesn't have a tourism board in India.
Yep.
Interestingly.
And we're on a hook, to be fair. The Vietnam hook is not so well.
It has.
They don't need child. Sorry, you can't.
Why don't you answer?
In India, so you have, I see, Dipti said that everybody is looking at India, right? So it's not only about the tourism boards. It's also about the airlines. It is also about the, the chains putting their GSO offices or putting their international sales offices in India, different chains worldwide and all. So what happens is you got to have a value. The most of the deadliest combination, the poisonous or failed combinations would be you have a very high price point for hotels and transport. 2, you don't have anything which is big ticket or dot connecting items with Indian consumers. This is a cocktail for failure. And 3rd, I agree with her. There are many such examples. I don't want to name the countries, but then they would tell you world is booming. Why is India not booming? India will not boom. Indians are very smart. Actually, Dipti said, people are not following pattern. When people do not, when is the time when people don't follow pattern? It is all around the deals. It is all around the events. It is all around the concerts, right? One concert happening in Baku, people forget Southeast Asia. No, first I go to Baku, I see that, something is happening. There is a great deal coming. That's how they change the trend. Japan. Why would people go to Japan? And trust me, is Japan a word of mouth destination? Probably no. It is not. You'll be surprised. At least I can share my view. I've been traveling to Japan every year in last 3-4
Why is Japan exported in the last
Yeah.
24
So,
months, not 12 months now?
yeah, that's a good question. So let me attempt to answer this. So I started from this. Is Japan a word of mouth destination? Somebody who's traveled to Japan 15 days, for example, any customer, he comes back, you ask him, how was your trip? Was it? I can tell you, the customer who's come back from Sri Lanka, customer who's come back from Japan, you will have a very different level of reaction will be very different. I can guarantee that. The customer who's come back from Sri Lanka, he'll say, wow, what a destination it was. Why? Because perception-wise, he thought he's extension to Kerala.
So you're saying that the expectation gap is much more
No, so I'm coming to that point. Aspiration. Japan, from the time we are born, we've always seen Japan as the aspirational country in the world. Most developed. Whatever in life you would aspire to achieve, the products, they would always be made in Japan. So what happened that aspiration kept on growing. Whatever best was, it would be from Japan. Systems, rail, discipline, everything would be, So when the currency valuation played a big role. When the yen went down, big time, the cost of the hotels, cost of transport, everything fell down. The shopping became very easy. So when people are doing more shopping from Japan than I remember people doing from Europe, UK or Singapore or even Dubai. Every time people are going to Japan, they are coming back with, the big bags because of the shopping advantage.
good. Right, then we're going to Gaurav now. And this is sort of talking on the same aspect. Do you think there is a little bit of a fatigue around similar attractions worldwide? So, you just... And you talked about Madame Tussauds. You have it in Turkey, you have it XYZ, you have Legoland, this is going through.
You can refuse to answer this.
No. So how do you go about telling people that, hey, you know what? Trying the same attraction in 3 different countries, it's a different experience, it's something you enjoy. How do you sort of address that fatigue gap?
Yeah, thank you for asking this, because hopefully a lot of people watch this and hopefully they understand. So it's a fact that having a same attraction across it, we spoke about Madame Tussauds. There's a Madame Tussauds in Singapore, there's a Madame Tussauds in Bangkok, there's a Madame Tussauds in Dubai, there's a Madame Tussauds in Hong Kong. London to Germany, and from a short haul perspective, there are 5 of them just about 3 hours from India. So it is quite a task to convince a Neeraj or a Dipti that in your Singapore itinerary, please add me. In your Hong Kong itinerary, please add me. Just about there. So, and which is fair also, right? Because ideally, they sell maybe to the same customer. So the customer will also reward that. Why should I again go there? So this is something that we've also understood. It's no rocket science to know that this is becoming a little tricky. But the idea is that we've honestly, and maybe a step back, is that when we're talking about Indians and how India is evolving, not evolving, are new destinations selling or not selling, I think we need to question ourselves, maybe at least as an attraction, what am I doing for the India market? That's the first thing. I think a lot of people want India, but they just don't do anything for India. So one of the things that we've been heavily investing, firstly, is to get a 3-member team in India. If you look at in the attraction ecosystem, just about nobody has firstly presence in India, and even if they do, I don't think they have such a big team. So we've understood that India is a big market, 6-7 years back, and we invested in the India market. And again, from a product perspective, we are trying to create different options for the customer. And I'll give you a few examples just from a Madame Tussauds perspective. Madame Tussauds Singapore has, apart from obviously a lot of Indian figures, a lot of Singaporean, Southeast Asian figures, we've also tried to create experiences which are different. So in Madame Tussauds Singapore, there is a 4D show based on Avengers. Fully shot, the background is of Singapore. We have a similar show in London also, but the background is London. In Madame Tussauds Bangkok, there is a 4D show on Ice Age. See, Madame Tussauds ideally is a family product. So we've tried to create and in Dipti's example, 25 saal pehle, maybe the father of the family used to decide, the man of the family used to decide where the family holidays. In the last few years, it was always the lady who decides. I think in today's world, whoever has kids will agree that the kids now decide where the family holidays. So we've tried to create some elements in each of our products to have a differentiation between each other, which is where we are trying to create that differentiation. But I am fully with you. It is leading to repetition product wise, and which is why maybe new faces and different ways.
Not just with you, right? It's like there's aquarium in every city in the world, right? And we get pushed into the India market in every IBD in the world. You get the feedback to get from it from time to time is not straight. So it's very hard to push products that are not fairly consistent, homogeneous to each other across the world, right? People not.
So I think on this, just to add on, see, there are two kind of products, Nikhil. One is the product which has been made for domestic consumption. The moment you try to push that to an international ones, customers, that's when this creates a problem. Like for example, aquarium. Suppose Abu Dhabi makes, or for example, any other destination makes a aquarium, right? If you have made that aquarium for a domestic tourist, domestic consumption, because every city has a right to make their aquarium, right? Every city has a right to make your Madame Tussauds. I mean, who's stopping them? There's a domestic consumption also. The problem happens when you have plenty of them in different places and you try to get and try to focus on international. By the way you get it, it's fine. But you can't have the center, saying that, boss, 80% I'll have this international tourists coming and visiting.
But that's also where tour agents and travel agents have to play a very big role. See, it won't stop anybody from making what they have to. And see, usually what happens is that the Indian consumer is also searching. When you search, it will propel your top attractions of the world. That's where the maximum, they would want to have a bucket list of going to, we spoke about bucket list, right? Whoever is going to Japan would get to see the Disneyland. It's obvious. Whoever is going, you're trending, you're searching, you are showing as number one. I just feel there has to be small but better wins of how is it that you're getting new attractions.
How are you promoting Vietnam and getting people to stay 5 nights, 6 nights, 7 nights in Vietnam? What are you telling this?
So the Vietnam story is interesting, and we were just about when we were discussing about Japan. I think it fit the right boxes. Actually, I give credit to Vietjet. Let's start from there, okay? It started from a marketing gimmick to say travel to a new destination in $99, right? Of course, COVID hit, etc. It went absolutely free. And then there was everything that picked right for the destination. The price of a hotel or a land is 1/3 of what you get in your Southeast Asia destination. Food, yes, vegetarian was a problem, but you know how Indians are. They spiral through any destination and suddenly you had a fleet of 10,000 Indian restaurants that was available. The infrastructure was fresh, clean, neat. Shopping was great. And, I kind of tend to disagree a little with Gaurav. While in a family holiday, yes, from what used to be protocoled by saying men and then women and now children, now people are taking holidays not as one capacity. It's not like one single holiday. They're doing it as families, they're doing it as tags, they're doing it as couples, they're doing it as solo women, multiple cohorts, right? So there's as much of travel and therefore there's many impressions. Coming back to the Vietnam story, I think it started small, but it started fast. They were more receiving of Indians, it wasn't as bad, infrastructure was good, everything just ticked. And then it started propelling where people are saying, hey, you know what, I'm getting a Vietnam holidays at 1/2 the price, because everybody started comparing. And then organically, social did very well for Vietnam as a destination.
Is it keeping up with feedback now? Because now there's a perception of Vietnam that people have, right? It's going to be good, it's going to be value for money, it's going to be decent food. Now, is the perception gap, like now there are people expecting too much with Vietnam now or no? Not for like
Continue to grow. See, again, I'm saying you need to compare. Japan is an expensive destination. So Indians are very finicky about value for money. Right? You go there, you stay for 10 days, you spend 4-5 lakh rupees. And suddenly when you come back, you say, will I repeat it? The question is that. Will I go again? That's the question, right? So Vietnam, because one, it's a long country from a length point of view. And there is what Indians are visiting is just the 50% of what is there.
But the good part is, Virat, the good part about Vietnam, unlike a Thailand that struggled for years beyond Bangkok and now has
Very quickly they are going.
Vietnam did it very differently.
Actually, if you look at any destination, from you were asking earlier, your first question was what's the challenge about expanding itineraries, going to the unknown. There's a legacy issue in India. And I saw this when I was at Visit Britain. At the moment, my challenge is Dubai used to be it. You probably faced it with Abu Dhabi, that it was only Dubai. It now expanded to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And I'm sure in a year or 2 years from now, it will expand into Ras Al Khaimah as well.
Consider expansion into that.
The reason is, I think, once you've got the inventory in, you've got the experience, you created the awareness. So you look at Georgia as an example. Indigo started direct flights. There were no itineraries in our market for Georgia. So when Georgia came in as direct access, you suddenly had them covering everything pretty much. But when it came to Europe, you had those multicultural itineraries with a day and a half in London. It didn't change for a decade and a half.
So you've taken my next question about, and I'm going to ask the both of you this because this is what you do. How do you train staff? So if you're a small to medium-sized tour operator, let's say you're sitting in Ahmedabad, how do you train your staff? It picks up your phone, sits on the counter to sell deeper, more personalized experiences in sort of standard destinations.
See, the problem today is with the AI coming, with so much of instant knowledge in the hand of the customer. Do you really what are you going to add as a value add unless and until you have been to that destination? There's no way you can add any value. Honestly, what value are you going to add? As a human, I mean, the guy has to go and see what's there.
Maybe head of products or the people who are able to go do the contracting or that strategic decision to start with. So you start at the top to say, is this a strategic priority for you guys now? Where the top management, maybe one or two people go there, see the destination. They see that yes, it fits into what I can do over here, and they have that vision overall. And it's kind of starts trickling down. Where you start getting the contracting team in, you get the MICE teams in, you get, eventually I think it's the sales staffs that do come in, but till you don't have the itineraries, we are still never going to be able to get each and every salesperson in. So it comes down to going virtual as well. In today's day and age where you could do your destination trainings virtually, we have an OTT platform, so an online travel training platform as well, which we give access to. Now, there is uptake on it, but I think what we find that works better is the fact that when you're doing the actual destination training and you're allowing time for question and answers, there's also the opportunity where we go into the offices. We get the sales guys in or the ops team, whoever needs to come in, and we kind of cater what we're talking about in terms of the destination to that audience, right? So the salesperson today, and it goes back to the challenge that we're trying to address over here, is they're selling what they're comfortable selling. But when you see a destination like Vietnam, it was probably more demand driven, where you didn't have a choice but to get those itineraries together. The sales staff didn't have an option but to sell it because Harry just wrote being asked. So it kind of becomes where if the customer is asking for it, I don't have a choice to sell it.
And the destination also was Vietnam wasn't built for WIP for last 20 years. They've been building the destination.
Just interestingly on the same question, so we are not a conventional retail shop, right? Like we do holidays, but our sales force is all variable, which means that they are part of MakeMyTrip, and we have this very unique concept where we have about 2,500 women across, and the algorithm reads that the customer sees the product that we make, puts it up onto the funnel. If they want to transact online, which is great because imagine for someone saying in India, nobody will buy a holiday online because your ATV is very high, where we do most of what we do in our business, double digit is coming from a customer transacting pure online, by the way.
No human interaction at all.
Zero. The customer has a choice to put in a query and it goes from either a chat desk or it goes to an interface where a women expert kind of talks to you. Now, when you have 1500 of those, you can't have them travel. It's not humanly possible, right? What do? Of course, we get as many. So whoever's doing really well, we get them to travel, etc. And I agree with Zeeras because I've been in a offline fitment for as long as, to 20 years of my career. But in this setup, it's uniquely, how do we drive this? Exactly what I'm saying for the consumer. Till the time they don't see a value, or as I call it, the hook, which grabs their 7 seconds of attention, my seller works exactly the same way. So we create very small cohorts to say, you're going to Attire Dubai, you are doing 4 nights, 5 days. What am I giving you different than what maybe my competition is doing? And it could be as small as just 4 hours in the day to 8 hours or a new introduction of the city. So when we do trainings and we do obviously everything in a virtual format, we start with that to say, the traditional Dubai, what you sell. Of course, we have answers ready for any questions that you may have to help you sell. So this is one thing I like for you to quote when you have your customers calling you to say, I want to travel to Dubai. Or any destination for that matter. So that's how our product trainings happen, to say it could be an introduction to maybe a Ras Al Khaimah in the fitment of a 4-night 5-day itinerary across FITs or groups. But you are actually coming it with all the pomp and show to say what is the value that you're giving. And it's not just the product. It has to work with the price because then Indians won't take it without value. That's how we wrote.
I met a guy from Nillur in Ahmedabad, in Andhra Pradesh. He sells about maybe max 1,000 people a year. For him to adapt to a Ras Al Khaimah, because it's his business, he knows his client and whatever, he can do these things maybe in a day's, whatever, in a week's time max. I feel, because I've been in some other companies also in the past, I feel as a smart boss, I would let my team sell what is selling, because I have to achieve a huge target. And whatever creativity ki hum baat kare, at the end of it, we'll be judged by our targets. So I feel there's always
this basically saying there's no risk taking. Jo bik raha hai bikne do, because
if I'm a smart boss,
I said the same thing. I'm saying it is also at the back of what is comfortable as a template, what gets you an easy transaction. But having said that, everybody knows that you have to de-risk yourself at some level, and today you can't be in an ecosystem where you're not one competitive but also have a advantage, because that customers not going to come to you. Today generational travel happened. You knew that there would be people who will say they'll come back to you in terms of repeat, royalty, etc. The people who are in their millennial setup or couple segment today between the 15 up until 45, they want different things. So you have to balance it out both. I'm not saying that tomorrow the conventional Dubai itinerary will go away from the India market. It'll stay. But you could do smaller bids, and you're right. 90% of our business is still same. And it's also because there's familiarity to the product of who's selling it. And obviously it will happen because you all have targets at the end of the day. But I also feel that it's very important to de-risk yourself, and you have to start small. You don't have to, I'm not saying build an itinerary for Manchester all 5 nights. Nobody's going to take it. There's no searches, there's no logic to how it's going to happen. But if you were to infuse a day or to say why you should be going there, I think there are people who are up for grabs for that.
So the biggest challenge we had when we look at some destinations was changing the group market behavior. Because when we were said, put in another night in our destination, they would say, "But KC nahi kar raha, Uber Thomas Cook nahi kar raha, but we SOTC nahi kar raha, hum nahi kar sakte, because our customer will not pay 10% extra to spend the 1 night extra till you get the scene Abu Dhabi plus Dubai plus Ras Al Khaimah 10% cheaper there, so we will not cheat." And that was huge issue to convince. Once one person did it,
But also depends what have you got to offer. See, if you beat around the bush by offering, small attractions, you may not get the traction. See, Dubai is a classic example. It's a story starting from 2 nights, Dubai, then going into the stopover, then going into the 6-7 nights, and now there are warning signs. Now you have a nearby destinations which are eating the pie from Dubai. 7, it is coming down.
Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore is a classic example.
The thing is, every forget the world is not going to forget, but Indian will be forget. It's also with this connectivity. You know, okay, connectivity. When connectivity comes because there's demand for it, like this.
Yeah, or I think there's two ways of looking at it because Georgia didn't have the kind of demand that came in when Indigo started their flight. Access plays a big role in it, including air connectivity, direct air connectivity, and visas. I think we underestimate how important these two are. And then what Neeraj was saying earlier about the local infrastructure being decent enough, as well as the product having the right fit for an international audience, whoever they might be attracting or whatever they're catering to.
Georgia is a classic example. So Indigo started Georgia flights. Tbilisi, I actually asked them, why did you start the flight? Now all cancel. You know why they started Tbilisi flight? Not for tourists. They started for medical students and their parents and visitors. So there are 38,000 students. You multiply it by 2 times BFR. One flight is what 180 seats is what taking care.
But you know, this is the Ryanairification of destinations because they started Europe. Ryanair would fly from London to like a Stuttgart. Suddenly tourism would go to Stuttgart because it's cheap.
Correct.
It's efficient. Correct. Just go there because we can go there and at a cost efficient price, not because of anything else. So, Shah, let me ask you a little bit of the repeat visitors. How do destinations make sure that you go back to them as customers year on year, every couple of years and all? Because you know, there's certain destinations, like even the aspirational ones have a repeat visitor challenge. Right? I've gone to Japan once, I'm done now. I'm not going to go there after 10 years or no ever. So how are the destination are you going to make sure people go again and again every couple of years? What are you doing about it?
So I think there are 2 parts to this, right? One is you've gone there and you've had such a fabulous time that you want to go back. And you've had a great time again, so you want to go back. Depending on what your purpose of vacation is. So, you know, for someone like going to Dubai, there have been new things opening. Now you've got Abu Dhabi and you've got Ras Al Khaimah on both sides, which are also expanding and have developed in these last years. One more than the other, but the other one's catching up soon, right? So, I think what you're going to start seeing is people will come into Dubai, no doubt. And if you actually look at the attractions that you're getting across the UAE in terms of experiences and interactions, they're complementing each other. We're not competing with each other anyway. So those itineraries which you had for 3 nights that became 7 nights in Dubai have now extended to Abu Dhabi. I'm also starting to see that traction happen in Ras Al Khaimah, right? So people are asking me how long is it from Abu Dhabi to Ras Al Khaimah? The rail connectivity that's coming in eventually is going to obviously help, right? But when you're looking at some of the other European destinations or the more developed countries where I think there are different places you can explore. So when you're talking about, say, the UK or, you know, Switzerland or France, for example, I think we've seen their marketing shift as well, right? They've gone from the icons into the regions to create that awareness, which has now led to development of those itineraries because those marketing plans with the tour operators were focused on developing itineraries for the regions. So it's kind of that conversation, and to, you know, what you were saying earlier as well about being risk averse. Absolutely, I think anyone running a commercial organization will obviously be risk averse. And that's where we kind of come in as well to say we're putting in money with you as a partner. Is this something that would work with you, right? It's not saying, I'll give you this money only if you do this. It's obviously a question of how do you see this developing over the next 3 or 5 years as a strategic partner as opposed to let's do a tactical offer for Independence Day.
I don't know. Let's talk about my favorite topic now, incentives and tax.
Repeat, can I add one point?
Please.
So, we had a meeting with, this question actually came, the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister was addressing the forum. And he said, somebody asked him, what is the ultimate, happiness, what you get? He said, somebody leaving Srinagar airport and pledging that I'm going to come back again.
Okay.
Right? And he said very profound thing. He said, the hospitality people who are in the hospitality business, people who are serving the customers of that destination, are the ones who are going to decide whether this customer is going to come back or not. Irrespective, whatever attraction you have, whatever you offer. if people are great, if they're really, really expanding, going beyond the call of duty to please people, that decides whether the repeat is going to happen or not.
Good point. Really thinking about it. Pricing, incentives. Gaurav, this one's for you. I'm looking at you as it. We all know experiences, attractions have reasons in margins in the B2B space, right? There's not a lot there, couple of dollars here and that kind of stuff. So how do you encourage your agents to sell your attractions more and more when the financial incentive might not be that much?
So they're sitting here. I think firstly what's happened is that we do it because it's Gaurav.
Yeah, nobody's.
Seriously.
Apart from looking at his beautiful face,
You don't do it because of Gaurav, but that's a different story. But I think what's happened is obviously post-COVID, India, I feel Indian travel fraternity, tour operators, OTAs, travel agents have really been pampered to a different level. Led majorly by maybe cruiser boats, obviously for the right reasons. But then expectation of the whole ecosystem
Which tourism boards?
become expectations are really high, right? So for a $20 ticket, it becomes very difficult to get into incentivization, bonuses and all things. What we do obviously is we try and add value, and I am fully with the Jammu and Kashmir Minister and Neeraj in terms of how do you touch the customer, not physically, in terms of the experience when they are in the attraction, right? So we spend quite a bit of money on training. I think post-COVID, and I'm sure all of you will agree, the service levels across all industries have really gone down because nobody's investing in training. As Merlin, I think that's I'm so proud of the fact that we really invest on the customer journey, on the customer experience. We were talking about technology, AI and all things. We were, I think, one of the first ones. Now, if you come to any of our attractions, you don't need to go and physically exchange tickets. We've tried to make the customer journey as seamless as possible, as non-interacting with a human setup. From an incentivizing perspective, firstly, and again, I agree with Neeraj, gone are those days where Indians wanted cheap. So I think I don't think any Indian wants cheap things. They want value. So where we come and where we pay upon is value.
but the B2B market wants cheap. The customer doesn't want cheap, but the
Yeah,
wholesaler wants cheap.
Yeah, so the answer just about similar to both of them is that we will not reduce the price, but we'll increase the offer or the experience that we will give you. Starting from a value add when they are in the attraction, to masala chai, maybe one of the attractions that they are visiting, to as basic as maybe Indian signage at our attractions, as basic as everyone has videos and images of their attractions, but we try and get an Indian face into it to make it a little more relatable for the Indian consumers, so or the partners to maybe sell it more effectively. So to answer your question, Merlin is just about not there in terms of incentivizing or marketing and all things, but we are here to add value to their customer journey, and that's where we try and work with these guys to ensure that the experience that the customer gets while they are
So you're saying
at the attraction.
if you go to Singapore, send your customer to my attraction because they'll have a great time. You'll give you good feedback, they'll be happy with you. That's why.
That's the whole idea of
I think just adding to Gaurav's point, it is that, but along with that, there's also a part of how he bundles it to make it exclusive for us. There's a difference there. So a customer sees value to say, I'm getting 2 at the price of 1. Let's put it like that. So it's about our job to bundle it and make it more attractive in whatever form of whether it's a FIT itinerary or an FT itinerary. But it's about seeing the value of price. So maybe he's not giving me a direct discount, but I am negotiating hard to say, with what you are giving as Madam Tushar's ticket, can you give me something additional, exclusive for Make My Trip guests that they feel that, hey, I'm not getting it differently from maybe another company. So those are maybe the negotiations that happen when we interact with attractions as opposed
So you don't want incentivization in terms of pricing. It's more for me, if you get exclusivity, you're happy.
No, it's not just exclusivity or even incentivization in terms of maybe 2 at the price of 1. It could be that, right? It's not straightforward to say, I'm looking at one attraction and give me $10 less. I'm saying keep your $10, but with that, give me something more, which will maybe be $1 or $2 extra to the price, but I'm showing value to my customer. because in a OTA fitment, the customer wants value and price becomes a very big denominator because that's the first interface he see. They're not talking to anybody. They're seeing your product on a platform. So if I'm not showing value, it will never have the customer drop in a query. That's second stage. So at least in where we see as that's how India market works. It's we like he said earlier to say it's all good to say I'll do new products etc. I'm telling you the product is not different and the price is not attractive. The customer, no matter how well they traveled, they'll always, even the most well-traveled customer will say, hey, listen, compared me and I'm getting better on X platform and Y platform. So I'm just saying, no matter how much the money you have, Indians want value at every life stage and income stage as well.
I also think, when you look at an incentive thing, sometimes it could well be like a Merlin, for example, has a commercial contract across 140 attractions globally with most of the tour operators. If you then had an attraction that you were running that competed with what Merlin has in a particular destination as a standalone, making that entry into a big player makes it that much more difficult is where the incentive would have to come in. Because does a Thomas Cook or a Make My Trip want to actually have a different contract for one attraction in a certain city and have to deal with any of that? So that's where it becomes little more different from a global company that's...
My one last point I wanted to add. This is also my message to many of the attractions or tourism boards or destinations which are new, right? Which are want to make entry into Indian market. At least I can say about my organization. Don't treat Thomas Cook as your marketing agency. I'm not here for giving you a delivery or a commitment of passenger numbers. Please, if that is the case, I can do that kind of arrangement for the countries which are spending a lot of money on brand, where the guarantee is there's a demand going to come. There we are willing to sign or willing to talk on ROI-led campaigns. The countries which are new, they want to get the foothold. Please treat Thomas Cook as a media partner, not as a travel partner. We will be wasting each other's time otherwise.
The world is now moving on to this.
No, you do. I'm saying you do. Please do ROI based. But do ROI.
Don't
when
come
you...
to them, come to them only when you're established.
Now you have
No.
Now you have performance.
You come, but don't tag saying that, boss, I will only give you money per packs or, unit bit.
Wouldn't that, Neeraj, be... It could be explained, like a lot of and similar.
We try to explain, they still don't understand.
It's, the benchmark you today have is that we look at a global marketing channel, right? They say, hey, if you spend $1 million with me, this is the impressions you get, this is the reach you get, this is the people you spend in destination.
Nah.
Today, marketing.
That's what the media says, right?
Performance marketing looked at with that angle.
Yeah.
Therefore, we look at it as joint marketing. Is when I'm giving you $100,000. I'm not giving you to make my trip. What are you giving? What are you bringing to me except brand awareness? Because that's fine. What are the actual ROI KPI you're giving me? Who will bring you destination?
No, but I think I tend to agree with what Neeraj did say in the beginning. We also have a lot of bitmans that come in who have no reach on Google in terms of even...
Nobody searches. You can't put a responsibility of that country on Thomas Cook saying that, boss, you create this thing, yeah?
You can still get crease.
Therefore, we politely decline. We say, listen, you won't get this because it's not possible. It doesn't,
And I don't want that money. Politely we tell them, sir, sorry, we don't need, because I can't do justice.
That might disagree with you. Okay, guys, so we're the last home stretch. I have one question each for you and rapid fire style. Let's keep it short, sweet. Give us a takeaway for the camera that we can run. Okay, let me start with Deepti. One travel behavior do you think that is changing rapidly in the Indian market in terms of, it could be consumer, it could be B2B, whatever you think everyone here should be aware of and should be really interested?
I think just the love for travel. Conventional travel would mean once a year holiday, and I think more than ever, people are traveling for every occasion, just as Vishal mentioned now, for every need, every given opportunity of a long weekend, or just the fact that they want a break. I think just seeing all of these and addressing it to capture it from a tour operator aspect is a good place to be in, because the more that you do for the captive audience, the more business you'll have. So I think just being attentive to seeing how travel is unraveling for the Indian itself is a start, and I think that's something to keep an eye on.
Irv, if you had one wish for the B2B community where they're selling your products, that you could change something about the way they sell it, or the way they package it, or the way they promote it, what would?
Firstly, I think they're doing a good job. I think let's not barricade them on the way they do it. Obviously, wish is that appreciate what the other side is doing.
Okay.
And maybe respect the effort, respect the thought process. Create more distribution avenues is what I think is maybe required right now.
Vishal, one like all the destinations, you've done this for a while, right? Most destinations they get tendered the same thing, right? From in terms of promotion, be it B2B or to large extent B2C activist. What could you do? White sheet of paper, what will you do differently, or what destinations should you do differently in the market? We're not doing it at the moment.
You mean marketing a destination in India? It's hard to say, right? I think eventually it boils down to what your proposition as a destination is. Who are you catering to? And then what path you're going to take. I mean, I think if I had to sum it up as a generalized rule in terms of what you might want to do with your marketing, I'd probably say it's reels to reviews to retail is the mode you're eventually going to have to take, which I call the 3 R's. Because if you've not got the online presence to create the awareness, if that person's not looking at the reviews for consideration, you're not going to get into the retail. So I think it's basically sometimes it's going back to the basics, which has worked all the time. But it could be digital. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to put a notice board at Churchgate Station.
Or a holding.
Yeah.
Those were fine. I like
Even the hoardings as much as...
It's a fantastic out of one. That means that they work really well. Because
Yeah.
you see an uptick immediately.
I think the challenge with the out of home, like you're saying, is the fact that you can't measure the ROI, but the awareness it helps with a lot.
I still remember, sorry deviating, and I know that we are out, is the South Africa outdoor campaign that happened in 2008, where they plastered themselves.
That country is outdoor. If they don't do outdoor, it doesn't connect. It has to. How are you going to? You're an outdoor, country. You better do the massive outdoor campaign. There has to be a connect with the mediums also.
Here's one immediate step tour operators can take with their staff, except sending them on trips and holidays.
Sorry, what is it?
One step teams can take or tour operators can take with their staff to help them better sell new destination, new products and destination. Except send them their own vendors or holidays.
I think educate, make training interesting, use technology to make things more real, incentivize, motivate them to sell differently. I think these are some of the playbooks. I mean, I don't have any other magic wand to make, create things differently. But these are some of the, the time-tested.
Results.
Yeah.
So thank you very much everyone for being here.